Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're locking and loading, you could say, and plunging straight into the raw intensity of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, a real powerhouse of a film.
And we're tackling one of cinema's most enduring and complex characters, Gunnery Sergeant Hartman.
Ah, Hartman. On the face of it, he's just the drill instructor archetype dialed up to 11, isn't he?
Totally. That nonstop barrage of insults, the iron-fisted control. It's a performance that just screams dominance.
And that initial read, it's completely understandable. He's terrifying.
Absolutely. But our mission today, well, it's to dig a bit deeper than just that surface impression.
Right.
We're aiming to understand the man behind the bellow, really get into his head, and we're going to try doing that using the fascinating lens of the Enneagram.
Specifically, the sexual one subtype.
Exactly.
Now, for those tuning in who haven't really encountered the Enneagram before,
Mhm.
maybe just briefly, it's a system, a framework, outlining 9 core personality types.
Right, types driven by different motivations, different fears.
Exactly. Think of it like a map of personality, sort of. And the subtypes then add another layer. They show how these core types get expressed through our basic instincts.
Self-preservation, social connection.
Or the one we're focusing on today, the sexual instinct, which isn't just about sex. It's more about intensity, one-to-one connection, impact. A really powerful tool for, gaining a richer understanding of why people and characters do what they do.
Yeah, it moves beyond just simple labels. So while your gut reaction to Hartman might be, okay, this guy's all about power and control, maybe even pegging him as like a type 8 in the Enneagram.
Which is a common first thought, definitely.
Our deep dive into the film, looking closely, suggests a more intricate picture. We're making the case today that Gunnery Sergeant Hartman is best understood as a sexual one.
And what's really intriguing here is how Hartman's outward actions, that sheer aggression, might actually mislead us about what's truly motivating him underneath.
How so?
Well, Claudio Naranjo, who is a real pioneer in Enneagram studies, described this sexual one subtype as embodying zeal.
Zeal. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. It sounds intense. How does anger function for a sexual one in a way that makes them distinct?
Well, Naranjo explains that for the sexual one, anger isn't just, destructive emotion. It actually fuels their desires.
Yeah.
It potentiates them, makes them more aggressive in pursuing what they want to achieve.
So anger gives their desires teeth, basically.
Precisely. And this leads to what Naranjo termed a strong spirit of domination and conquest. And this is really the key difference when we're comparing to a type 8. The fundamental drive isn't simply being in charge for the sake of wielding power itself.
Right. So the control isn't the ultimate goal for the sexual one. What is? What's the underlying motivation for this domination?
It comes down to a deep-seated need to reform others, to perfect them, to bring them in line with their very strong internal sense of what is correct, what is perfect, what is morally right.
Okay. So the forceful behavior, the domination, it's all in service of this ideal, the standard they hold. That makes a lot of sense when you think about Hartman. His relentless, often brutal verbal attacks, they all seem aimed at transforming these raw recruits into his vision of the perfect combat-ready Marine.
It's not purely about breaking them down for the sake of it. It's about rebuilding them according to his own unyielding standards.
Precisely. Think about his iconic opening monologue. The immediate, absolute demands for obedience speak only when spoken to, sir, as the first and last word you will speak.
Undeniably intimidating, yes. But it's also step 1 in his mission of perfectionistic reform. He's laying down his unwavering rules, his order, right from the absolute start.
And that unforgettable line, I am hard, but I am fair. There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are, all equally worthless. It's shocking, obviously.
Of course.
But the inclusion of fair and equally, it hints at some kind of core principle, doesn't it? A sense of order and justice, however aggressively he expresses it.
It really does. That doesn't quite fit the profile of someone who just wants raw power over others,
Not
It strongly suggests the one's fundamental desire for things to be just, to be right, even if their method of achieving that is, well, let's just say intense. For a type 8, the emphasis would likely be much more on establishing their own personal authority and ensuring the recruits' subservience to them.
So we're seeing this harshness driven by a perceived moral imperative, Hartman's very specific definition of it, rather than simply a desire for raw, unchecked authority.
Exactly. Consider his statement later on. Today, you people are no longer maggots. Today, you are Marines. You're part of a brotherhood.
Right after they've made it through.
This isn't just him flexing his muscles or, taking credit. It reflects the one's deep focus on improvement, on reaching an ideal state in this case, transforming these individuals into his version of the perfect Marine.
He genuinely seems to believe his methods are not only necessary but morally justified to achieve that transformation.
He absolutely believes it. There's a conviction there.
The source material we looked at mentions that sexual ones have a special intensity of their desires that makes them urgent, vehement. That just screams Hartman. It's not a polite suggestion he's making, it's a full-scale assault on their previous identities.
And that intense drive, that vehemence, isn't solely about control in the abstract. It's fueled by this burning desire to see these recruits molded into his ideal. Think about the infamous bathroom scene with Private Pyle.
Ah, the jelly donut. A really pivotal moment, and the collective punishment that follows is just brutal.
It is brutal, but listen to Hartman's reasoning, his justification. Because of your failure to maintain the standards of Paris Island, Private Pyle has been allowed to jeopardize the lives of his fellow Marines.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
He frames it in terms of standards and collective responsibility.
Exactly. It's not just about punishing one guy breaking a rule. It's about upholding his standards, the Paris Island standard, and enforcing what he believes is the right way for the unit to function effectively and, in his view, morally. That fundamental drive to enforce a moral code is very, very much in line with the Type 1.
The concept of contradictory dualistic thinking in sexual ones also really jumps out when we think about Hartman. His world seems so black and white.
Total black and white.
Yeah.
Good or bad, worthy or utterly worthless. It's extreme.
His language is a perfect illustration. You are not even human beings. You are nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit.
There's just no middle ground there, is there? No room for imperfection, no space for individual struggles or, nuance. You either meet his incredibly high bar or you are completely without value in his eyes.
That stark division perfectly aligns with the one's tendency toward black and white thinking, just amplified like crazy by the sexual subtype's intensity.
It's like black and white thinking on steroids almost.
And he exudes this unwavering moral certainty. He doesn't seem to have a single shred of doubt that his methods are the only correct ones. It's as if he's personally been handed the absolute truth, and it's his sacred duty to enforce it.
That belief in absolute truth and their role as the one who knows what's right is a key characteristic of the one. For the sexual one, this conviction is just expressed with immense force, immense zeal.
So when Hartman screams, "I will PT you all until you fucking die. I'll PT you until your assholes are sucking buttermilk," which is terrifying.
It is.
It's not just a threat to intimidate.
Well, it is intimidating, obviously, but beneath it, you can see it as a declaration of his zealous commitment to what he firmly, unshakably believes is the only correct way to forge Marines. It's the right way. Therefore, the force is justified.
It's almost as if his constant, relentless criticism of the recruit, the endless put downs, like 5'9", I didn't know they stacked shit that high. It feels like an external manifestation of that incredibly harsh inner critic that Type 1s often possess.
That's a great way to put it.
Just amplified and directed outward with extra venom by the sexual subtype.
Exactly. Type 1s tend to hold themselves to impossibly high standards. And for the sexual one, this intense internal pressure often just spills out as harsh judgment and relentless criticism of others who don't measure up to their ideals.
Yeah, you see it throughout the film, this constant, almost compulsive drive in Hartman to mold and perfect the recruits. Even interactions that seem kind of random become opportunities for correction, for shaping.
Like the war face scene with Private Joker.
Exactly, remember that. He asks Joker for a joke. Joker tells one.
"I'd like you. You can come over to my house and fuck my sister."
Right. And Hartman sort of smiles and immediately pivots. "You got a war face? Ah, that's a war face."
Even in that seemingly lighter moment, is maybe a slight crack in the facade, Herman is still actively trying to elicit the correct response. He's sculpting Joker into his ideal of a fierce warrior.
So it's not solely about asserting dominance in that moment.
No, it seems more about achieving that perfect, battle-ready exterior that aligns with his internal standard of what a Marine should be. Every interaction is a chance to reinforce the standard.
Okay. So as we pull all this together, it seems pretty clear that while Hartman certainly displays aggressive and controlling behaviors, things that might initially make you shout, "Type 8,"
Which, again, is understandable on the surface.
his fundamental motivation seems quite different when you dig into it.
Yes, his primary driving force doesn't appear to be the pursuit of power for its own sake, like you might expect from an 8. Instead, it seems rooted in this deeply ingrained sense of moral righteousness and a powerful, urgent desire to reform and perfect others according to his very strict internal compass.
He's a zealot.
He's a zealot, absolutely. Driven by a vision of the ideal Marine, the perfect Marine.
A zealous reformer. That's a really insightful way to frame him. Driven by the one's core desire for perfection, but expressed with that intense, almost overwhelming energy of the sexual subtype.
And, as our sources highlight, there's a real tragic dimension to this. His unwavering, absolute belief in his methods, his zealotry, ultimately contributes directly to his own downfall.
It really does. A completely self-destructive path in the end.
It certainly raises critical questions about the potential dangers of that kind of zealotry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even when it originates, perhaps, from a desire for positive change or improvement.
So the key takeaway, really, from this deep dive is that understanding a character as complex as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman through this framework of the Enneagram, specifically seeing him as a sexual one, it gives us a far richer, more nuanced understanding of his underlying motivations.
It moves beyond just labeling him as a brutal bully or a sadist.
It encourages us, and you listening, to look beyond just those surface-level behaviors and consider the deeper, often unconscious drives that shape people's actions.
It really makes you wonder, how might understanding these kinds of fundamental motivations change how you interpret other seemingly straightforward individuals or characters you encounter? In film, in books, even in life.
Yeah, definitely gives you food for thought. And finally, a provocative thought maybe to leave you with. Could Hartman's incredibly intense drive for perfection, that zeal, if it had somehow been channeled through a different, maybe less destructive approach, could it have actually led to a more positive outcome?
Or is that kind of intensity inherently risky? What are the dangers when a desire for improvement becomes so rigid, so absolute, so zealous?
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.